Hi, the Mudbrooker here. Today I'm going to be making Krumkaka. Now what's a Krumkaka? Well, there's a few different types. There's a sweet dessert type, and there's a more savory type depending on what sort of filling you use and what sort of recipe you use for the batter. I'm going to be making the sweet dessert type, and it's basically a Norwegian cannoli. I'll show you how to make the filling, a cannoli filling, and a little bit later I'll show you how to make the actual Krumkaka. But first, I would like to thank my channel members on YouTube. S. Wheatley27, Ron Thompson, Loretta Comer, Billy Lee Lawhan, Karen Neal, Richard from Canada, The Needy Homesteader, Mel V, Me and You Acres, Rachel Tremblay, Beagle Mama, Greg Boone, Linda Jasper, Fred Revels, Mr. Smith's Kitchen, Judy James, Pat Hirsch, Mike Newby, Rich Miller, Mark Harper, and Morwenna Thacker. Since I'm going to be making a sweet dessert type thing, I'm going to have a sweet dessert type of liquor to go with it, which is glued the lid on. Anyway, I never remember to open these before I start filming. I don't know why. Anyway, your support is greatly appreciated, and here's to you guys. If you like what I do, like, subscribe, comment, join the channel if you like. It all helps out. Anyway, we're going to start with making a cannoli filling. It's fairly simple, there's not a lot of ingredients to it, but there are a couple of tricks involved. First thing you'll need is a 16-ounce container of ricotta cheese. You want to put that in a strainer or some cheesecloth, cover it with plastic, and let it drain in the refrigerator at least overnight, but 24 hours is better. You need to get as much moisture out of this as possible, otherwise your filling will be runny and sloppy. So we'll put that in the bowl, set that aside. You'll want an 8-ounce container of mascarpone cheese. Put that in there. Now this whole thing should be fairly sweet with a bit of a sour tang to it. You get some of the sour from the cheese, and you get some of the sour from the zest of a lemon. Now the recipe I originally tried out called for the zest of 1 lemon, but I find that too much lemon zest, while it does give it a nice sour tang, also makes things a little bit bitter. So what I'm going to do is I'm using the zest of a half of a lemon. I'm going to add about a teaspoon or so worth of lemon juice. Pop that out. Squeeze out some juice. And get myself about a teaspoon worth. Yeah, that'll be good. Put that in there. I want about a teaspoon or so of vanilla. This is homemade bourbon vanilla. Fantastic stuff. About a teaspoon of vanilla. And a cup of sugar. Now, like I said, my first batch of this that I tried making, I used confectioner sugar. Most people call for powdered sugar, but it still turned out sloppy even though I had let the ricotta drain real well. Did a little more research, and it turns out that superfine sugar works a lot better for making cannoli filling. Gives it a lot more body, and it doesn't turn sloppy like powdered sugar can. This is granulated sugar, but it's a lot finer grain than your typical granulated sugar is. Hopefully you can see that. It's a lot finer grained, but it's not quite powdered. So all we gotta do now is mix all of this up. You want to mix it until everything is brought together really good, but you don't want to overwork it. that tends to make it sloppy too. Once you get everything all mixed together good and it thoroughly incorporated, cover this with plastic and put it in the fridge and let it chill for a couple of hours. Once this is done chilling, we'll be ready to make the Krumkaka wafers. That's a pretty cool little process. I'm going to do that on my wood cook stove with my ancient Krumkaka iron. And that ought to be a lot of fun. Now, as you can see, this is a little bit loose, but that should firm up good once it chills a bit. Anyway, get that in the fridge, get that chilling, cover it with plastic, and I'll be back with our next step. Okay, we're ready to make the batter for these Krumkaka. It's a pretty simple batter. You need 3 eggs, and you're going to beat these a bit. Beat them fairly good. You don't need them really foamy, but you do want to get them whooped around pretty nice. You'll need a half a cup of sugar, just regular granulated sugar. Beat that in with your eggs. A half a cup, which is 1 stick, of melted butter. Make sure your butter isn't too hot because you don't want to cook your eggs. About a teaspoon of vanilla, or you can use lemon extract or different flavored extracts if you want, but I'm going to use vanilla. Get that mixed in. Set this aside. And a half a cup of flour. And then we mix everything until it's all mixed together and incorporated good. Once you got your flour so it's not going to dust all over the place, you can stir it a little bit harder and get everything mixed together real good. And that's Krumkaka batter. That's all there is to it. Now, like I said, there's different recipes. This is more of a sweet dessert recipe. There's recipes that call for more flour, and you can use different herbs and spices in them, cardamom, caraway, a lot of different sort of things, depending on what sort of filling you're going to use. Now, what is a Krumkaka iron? They're not terribly hard to find. Not always easy to find in the box, like this one, but it's similar to a waffle iron. You have a base, and then you have 2 paddles. Only on the inside, instead of being a waffle, it has a different sort of pattern like that, and it makes a nice thin wafer. These Nordic ware aluminum ones are fairly easy to find. You should also need a cone to roll them up. You'll see that later. They're not terribly hard to find. Or you can go with a vintage cast iron one. Now this is an Alfred Andresen Krumkaka iron. Not sure how well lit that is. And this is from the early 1900s. These are actually made by Griswold. And this is a basic Griswold waffle iron base that actually does go with this Krumkake iron. And for a cone, that little one is too small. I made this. This is actually the end of a shovel handle that I cut off and sanded down nice. And it works real nice for this. So I'm going to go ahead, get everything set up over by the wood stove, get my iron heated up, and we'll start making us some Krumkake. I have my iron all warmed up. I have a fairly small but hot little fire going in the stove. It's mostly pulled towards the front, right underneath my Krumkake iron. Got that sitting good and level. And we should be ready to start. What you do for your first one is you'll need to grease up the iron. I'm using some clarified butter. Just give her a few little daubs. Spread it around good. And you should only need to do this for the very first one you make. After that, you can just go along with them without greasing it again. That's warmed up good. Set my melted butter aside. And we're ready to start. You open it up and put about a tablespoon or so, a goodish little dollop in the middle of your iron, and you just close it up. Don't press it down because you don't want to squeeze out too much of your batter. You'll probably get some out the sides anyway. And the first one you make is probably going to be kind of pathetic looking. We'll see how it goes. And it doesn't take very long. It only takes maybe a minute or so. 45 seconds or so on the side. I think I can flip him over. Kind of knock some of that overflow off into the fire. And it's kind of a guessing game. Once you get into it and get a few going, you can pretty much tell how long it's going to take to make them. But, let's see here. You can peek a little bit, and that one definitely needs some more time. And you just flip it over a couple of times to make sure everything's browned up nice all the way around. And I'm going to throw just a couple more pieces of little wood in my fire. I don't want a whole bunch of big flames right underneath my iron, but I do want some more coals. Let's see, flip that over. Move my table over a little closer. Yeah, that one's browned up a bit. Take a knife, you lift one edge up, and then you roll it on your cone. Set this guy over here. Let that cool a couple minutes. I'll show you a little bit about the rolling here later, and we'll get my second one going. Okay, that one is just about done. So I'm going to move my camera so that you can see what I'm doing a little better when it comes to rolling them. There we go. Should be able to see that a little better. Yeah, that one's done good. Let me grab him. Now what you do after you got it off of your iron, set it on the table and just kind of roll it gently a little bit. Then put it so that the seam side is down, and we let this sit and cool for a few minutes. Get another one started here while we're waiting. Now that it's cooled a little bit, you just gently pull it off of the cone and set it aside and let it chill. Well, let it cool off. I'm going to make up the rest of my batter, get that all done, and then we're going to come back and we'll start filling these. I'll see you in a little bit. Got all my shells done. I let them sit and cool for about 15 minutes or so, and now we're ready to start filling them. Got my nice chilled cannoli filling, and I'm going to put this in with a piping bag. This is really the only way to do this because the shells are pretty delicate. If you try and pack it in there with a spoon, you're just going to end up with a bunch of broken shells. So get yourself a pastry bag, fill it up. That's enough for the first one anyway. That little bit off the edge. So that's so good. Get your pastry bag all armed and ready. And away we go. Set that aside. Grab the first shell. Like I said, these are pretty delicate, and you can see the pattern on there. Get on camera, hopefully. You can see the pattern from the iron on there. Start on the small end and give it a good squeeze of filling. Then flip it around and just squeeze it in and let it fill up. See, that's all there is to it. I'm going to get all these filled, then I'll come back and we'll give one a try. There's my Krumkaka, all filled, ready to go. This guy came up just a little bit short on the filling, so I'll eat him first. I usually chill these for about an hour before I eat them, but after a while the shells will start to absorb moisture from the filling, so they will get to be a bit soggy. They still taste great, but you won't have that nice crispiness that you do when you first make them. The main difference between Krumkaka and cannoli is cannoli shells are made from dough, which is then wrapped around a metal cylinder and deep fried, where, as you saw, these were made from batter. There's tons and tons of different recipes for batter, tons and tons of different recipes for filling, so the possibilities with these are pretty much endless. Well, there you have it. Old-fashioned Krumkaka with cannoli filling, just like your Norwegian grandma who married an Italian guy used to make. Hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you next time.